best, and you got the best. The hottest band in the world, Kiss!
Well, Ken, welcome to the 80's Glam Metalcast, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Well, as you're known online, man, you're franKENstein, and you do a lot of cool Kiss videos. You got one out right now, which I love, is 1979, The End of a Dynasty. That's your most recent one. And I thought it was an amazing watch, man. You cleaned up and reimagined, the classic Dynasty Tour bootleg. You've got some visual fixes, some audio fixes. Talk a little bit about why you did this and what kind of efforts went into doing it.
So basically, I'm a lifelong Kiss fan. I became a fan about '77 when I was about nine years old. So the first time I ever saw Kiss was Paul and Hollywood special. I was only 8 years old. I did not become a Kiss fan that day, but I did see it, and I thought they were like part of the Halloween show or something. And, you're that age, you're not really sure what a rock band is back then necessarily. But about a year or so later, my older brother brought home Kiss Alive. I was, deep into my Star Wars love at the time, but I was fascinated by this band, and I remembered seeing them on TV. And so within that year, my older brother and I were both hardcore Kiss fans.
Nice.
And I was one of those weird fans who did not walk away with Dynasty, did not walk away with Unmasked or The Elder or anything else. In fact, I stayed pretty hardcore fan through my early to mid-teens up until like the Animalized period when by that time, I had moved into different sort of areas of rock and wasn't really big into what we call hair metal and whatnot. So, but I always followed them even through those years. And so, I've been a musician my whole life, pretty much. I used to be the lead singer and guitarist for a thrash metal band called Anacrusis. We had 4 albums out back in the late '80s, early '90s. Did some touring, had a low budget video that got on Headbangers Ball.
Nice.
So I've been a long time. I play guitar, I sing, I play bass. I've always been to the recording side, mixing side. I produced all of our stuff. Even drums I could play. I'm not technically a drummer, but I do sequence and arrange all my drum stuff. I always have. So, what happened was, in the last few years, probably starting with the Peter Jackson Beatles thing, when they started kind of coming out with some of this software that allows you to isolate tracks, I was always, really fascinated by this. So, and I was one of those Kiss fans back in the early '90s, mid '90s. Bought all of those bootlegs that were floating around. I used to buy them through Domino Video, VHS. You'd send, I think, $20 for a 2-hour tape, and you could pick and choose. And eventually, I had pretty much everything that was out there back then. And of course, I was divorced at the time, living with a roommate of mine, and who was not a Kiss fan growing up. I was in my mid-20s, and I would get these packages, and I'd pop these tapes in, and he'd be like, "How can you even watch this?" And if you're a Kiss fan, you know the answer. It's like, you didn't see Kiss back then. I mean, they were everywhere in the late '70s, but they weren't on TV. They weren't on the radio a lot at all. So seeing a Kiss concert on video was just amazing, and any of that old stuff. So, years and years go by. We've had people, like Mickey G, some of these guys who have done a really great job at cleaning things up over the years. Putting stuff on DVD when that first started, where you didn't have the VHS players too much, and you could watch it on computer, digitized, so not a lot of fancy stuff going on, but, clean copies. And so probably what started the most recent stuff is a couple years back, with the whole leak thing. You probably know all about that stuff. We won't get into all that. But anyway, a lot of people started grabbing this cool old stuff, and then we had some of the AI tools coming out. People were upscaling, cleaning them up, some better than others, whatever. It is cool that the Kiss fans were doing this with stuff. We won't get into ownership and who blocks and doesn't block and all that kind of stuff. There happens to be a lot of stuff that is not off limits. It's not controversial. It is stuff that Kiss owns, or whoever does own certain shows. They don't block them. They allow them up. So I just choose to avoid the stuff I know is going to get blocked, because I'm not going to waste time on something that no one's going to see. That's why I chose to focus like Largo 77, the Winterland, and then the most recent one, the Dynasty tour. And so back to your question, I was a huge Kiss fan by the time Dynasty came out. You know, I actually got to see 321 Contact in school. Like, we watched it and was blown away. Like, all the other kids were looking, they're like, whoa, you know. It was just bizarre. So anyway, I was like, 12 years old by then. And unfortunately, the idea of going to a rock concert in 1979 for a kid that age, as far as I was concerned, and my parents weren't strict, but you just didn't really do that back then that much. So I felt like the only kid in my class the next day that didn't have the Kiss tour book and the Kiss shirt. I was so bummed. October 2nd, a day that will live in infamy. I've never forgotten. But anyway, so for me, Dynasty period was really special for me because that was when I was really deep into Kiss hardcore. I was there for, I think, double platinum and then the solo albums. But the first real new Kiss album that I got was Dynasty. And of course, at being the age 12, I was, my older brother, he kind of drifted away. He was getting into, more hard rock stuff. But I stayed with him. I loved the whole Dynasty period. I loved Unmasked. I'm a huge day one Elder fan from the very beginning. And so I stayed with him through all those years when everybody was pointing fingers and making fun of you really bad if you really liked Kiss still. And so for Dynasty, I had the Largo show like everybody did. It was absolutely horrible looking. It sounded pretty terrible. And I'll explain quickly why I think that is mostly. But, so for people that don't really know a lot about the audio or technical side of things, when we watch those, what we call Pro Shot, and of course most of what we call Pro Shot are basically in-house camera systems that were filmed and shown on screens, either closed circuit TV or screens in the venue. And then I guess they would offer to sell these shows to the bands. And sometimes they would buy them and sometimes they wouldn't. And then over the years, some of the ones that weren't purchased by the band have been tracked down, copies I've gotten. And the thing is, if somebody films a band, whether it's you or me or someone else, the band doesn't automatically own the footage. The person owns it, but you can't release it commercially without the band's permission. So the idea is you can maybe license it to them or whatever. You both kind of do, one hand sort of washes the other. So unfortunately, Dynasty, they were pretty much out, pretty widely seen during that time. And I saw the 2020 special, the Tom Snyder thing was on, 321 Contact. So Kiss was still pretty out there. But for whatever reason, the only video show we really have is that one Largo show. And what you have, and really break it down, is when these bands would do these live shoots like that, you were getting basically a soundboard feed of the audio. When you're mixing the band, when you're sitting in the audience listening to a band coming through the PA system, there's a lot of things going on. You've got the room ambience, you've got the levels mixed together, you're not hearing stage sound, whatever. So what you normally have, anybody that's played music and has done board recordings, if you think about how loud the human voice is compared to a drum set, compared to an amplifier that's cranked up, what goes to the PA is not necessarily the same level for every instrument. Now, you're going to get less of that variation with a gigantic venue, but what you get with these Kiss tapes is a very tinny drum mix. You barely hear it sometimes. Vocals are generally way too loud because they're cranked way up. Amps are loud on stage and whatnot. And so in the Dynasty show in particular, Ace is like very out of tune a lot of the time, both mentally and his guitar. He's got all kinds of feedback noise on his guitar, no noise gate or anything. So what you get in that recording is super loud vocals, very loud Ace guitar that's a lot of times out of tune, and sometimes he's just hitting bum notes. And that's in almost no drums at all. And so anybody, no matter how well you play, you're at a disadvantage. When someone's listening to that, they're going to hear a pretty bad sound. Almost nobody's going to sound good with that type of a mix. And we know that with the other shows, Houston and the other Largo stuff and Kobo and whatnot. Dynasty, though, in particular, was pretty rough. And I think it's given that tour a very bad name over the years. Now, we know we've heard the stories about Peter slowing up, speeding down, yada, yada, whatever. But we've also heard a lot of stories. Some of them are to believe, and some of them are people perspective. First of all, anybody that's ever been in a band, drummers always speed up live. It's just a thing. Okay, everybody, not just the drummer, Anytime you watch Kiss play Firehouse and you go, holy cow, Peter's playing fast, don't forget who starts it. Paul starts that song.
Yep.
Paul starts the riff, and Peter follows. Okay, so it's not even always the drummer that's doing it. But anyway, so what we have from Dynasty is there's a couple good board mixes that have leaked out the last couple of years. One of those being Knoxville, which is a pretty clean board recording, and what I use for most of my source for this show. And then we've got Atlanta, which is similar, but it's incomplete. In fact, there's no Beth and Paul singing Black Diamond, so I'm assuming Peter was having issues that night. And that's pretty much what we have. You know, we've got the Lakeland rehearsal, but so the idea of the franKENstein thing is, and I don't know that I came up with that name, but I just started calling my mixes that because of the idea of taking an arm from here, a leg from there, and a head from there, and a torso from here, and creating this new creature. It's like a franKENstein type of scenario. Of course, I realized, oh, hey, 10 in the middle, that's fine, that's my name, whatever. So I started doing those audio mixes first. So the idea is what I'm trying to do is sort of like the old Foley soundstage guys, right? The old movie sound effects guys, where you're looking at a silent screen and you see a guy walking across the floor, so you make footsteps to follow what he's doing. Now, are the footsteps his? No. But do they represent what you would be hearing? Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. And so it's very similar to what my approach, except this is actually more authentic because what I do is I'll take Peter's drums. I use software, a couple different softwares. Of course, none of us have what Peter Jackson has. None of it's to that level at all. But I figured out lots of different tricks and ways to get things to isolate better. And of course, if you're taking an album mix and you're isolating it, works much better than a mono bootleg recording. It's just not going to separate as well. But I pull the drums out pretty well, and then what I do is I go through the Dynasty show, the Largo show. I sync up perfectly exactly what Peter's playing, the Knoxville 79 show. So, we're within probably a couple weeks or something. So it's the same he was playing pretty much. I take those drums and I sync them up perfectly with what he's playing on the Largo video. And, I fix a couple little botches here and there. And, of course, there's a couple things they did, like I added the ending to New York Groove, the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, which they didn't do at Largo, but they did do that on that tour. I started making some changes. Things like that I changed and added. But for the most part, Peter gets a very, very bum deal on that tour. Right. And I think the thing is, if you listen to the material they were performing by that time, you've got something like New York Groove, where he's hitting a tom and a kick drum the whole entire song pretty much. You've got Radioactive. You've got Move On. You've got 2,000 Man. Very straightforward. There's almost no drum fills, no nothing going on. So this kind of can create the idea that Peter sort of had fallen off, his ability or whatever. But if you listen to Black Diamond, Detroit Rock City, King of the Nighttime World, Calling Dr. Love, Peter's killing it still.
Yep.
Peter, to me, sounds just as good as he did in 77, 78. All, substances aside and all that. But anyway, so what I do is I start with isolating those drums, and then I have bass tracks. I'll do the same thing. I decided to use the Knoxville vocals for most of it because they sound really good and clean. The Largo show sounds really, really bad, no matter what you do to it. And so I basically recreated. The reason I didn't call the video that I posted, Largo 1979, is because it's not a pure 100% clean-up version of that particular show. It is more of if Kiss were to release a Kiss Live 1979 generic tour show, that's more what this would be, I think. It is obviously videotaped, is obviously filmed or taped in Largo, but the audio you're hearing is not a 100% accurate reproduction of that exact show, though most of it is, obviously. But rather, as somebody that wants to sit and watch what did Kiss look and sound like in 1979, if they'd had a good, clean recording, that's pretty much what it would be, I think. And that's something that I know a lot of fans really particularly love that video because, just like me, we've never had anything but really bad representation of that tour. And, when you watch the Dynasty show, the original one, it's pretty clear that everybody's a little off their game that night.
Yeah.
Knows what's going on, but everybody's making equal, Gene is very, very, very consistent throughout all of the shows. I mean, he's probably the most, solid, reliable player that's ever been in that band. Gene's very underrated as a bass player and a vocalist. I mean, but he's pretty much he forgets lyrics, but hey, as a lyricist and a singer, I've forgotten my own lyrics 1,000 times. It just happens. But you've got, Paul hitting the wrong chords, and you got Calling Dr. Love. You've got, Peter botching Beth, and Peter doesn't forget the words. He just simply starts to sing the wrong verse, which is very easy to do in a song like Beth, where it kind of starts the same each verse. And if you hit the wrong word, you're going to sing the rest of the verse, and you're going to realize, like he does halfway through, oh, I'm not at the end of the song. Oops, So it's not like Peter forgot the words. He just sang the wrong verse, and it's happened on that tour a couple times. But anyway, Ace, of course, is Ace. So they were never, the tightest live band after Alive. Anyway, in the early years they were just really, really super tight. But everybody in that Largo '79 show, it seems very distracted. They seem a little low energy. Everyone's kind of eyes darting around. Paul very, very rarely forgets lyrics. I don't know of any other instance offhand where he does. But, move on. It's a brand new song. We've only played it a few times. He just simply forgot the line. And people try to say, oh, he's catching his breath and whatnot. No. No. It's pretty clear. He just gets the line. It's fine. It's okay. Star Child isn't perfect either, right? But no, it happens, and he's not catching his breath. He's standing in one spot singing the whole song. He's not running around. You never see Paul lose his breath and have to stop for 5-10 seconds to catch his breath. That's not what happened. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. There are a lot of guys, posting the old shows that we've all seen over the years, and they're cleaning them up, and they're, EQing and doing this and that. And, I decided really early on, I'd rather do something different. I'd rather try to recreate the idea of that show. It's what Kiss always did. The only difference is I'm being honest about it.
Right.
And so rather than just, run it through Topaz, upscale it, put an EQ on it and call it a remaster, I'm trying to do something a little bit different with it. I'm trying to clean it up. I go through shot by shot pretty much, try to correct the lighting as best I can. These are not great quality videos or audio that we're messing with. So it's not going to be 4K, true 4K. It's not going to be pristine, crystal clear, Atmos audio. It's just not going to be. But I try to do the best I can to where old Kiss fans like me, young Kiss fans, you want to sit back and watch Kiss Alive 2 or watch Kiss Alive or kind of watch the Dynasty tour without thinking that awful board recording is what people in those audiences were listening to, because it isn't. That isn't what people heard. And when you watch Houston, it's not that dry mix with tin can drums and, no audience or sound at all. If you've ever seen any of most Kiss fans have heard at least some bootlegs, audience bootlegs. The drums were thunderous. The guitars were loud. It just wasn't what we hear in those videos. And that's kind of what I'm just trying to bring to life a little bit.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I thought this... I've watched most of the videos that are on your channel. I think I've watched all of them. But I really liked this Largo one because, for me, I'm like with you. I really enjoy that era. I know a lot of people think that that's when Kiss started to fall apart or they lost their balls or whatever. But I think it was an interesting set list. It was interesting show, great costumes. I love the Dynasty suits. I love everything about it. And one thing, man, like I said, you mentioned it. When I first put it on, I was like, I wonder if he's going to fix Move On. Because that always stood out to me as strange. You know what I mean? He just misses that whole line of the verse. And you did. And it was really cool. Like, you just panned away to Peter or somebody else, so you didn't see Paul do it. But you heard the right words that were supposed to be there. And I think anybody who's a Kiss fan should really go back, check this out, and read your video description, because you really are explicit about what you've done, and I think it's really cool. Now, I went back and I went into the Kiss FAQ board, and you probably go there and follow stuff.
Well, I'm banned now.
Banned? But okay, all right, good. Well, I'm glad I'm bringing this up, because for me, I thought this was amazing. You're very clear on what you're doing. You're saying it right off the bat. This is not a true. This is not the true recording. This is, like you said, it's franKENstein together from different shows, trying to make a better show of, like, maybe you would have got commercially if Kiss released it. And it's a mixed bag, man. So do these people, what do you think of the people that say, I don't like when somebody does this? I mean, are these people just, like, uptight? What do you think when you see people kind of putting down something like this?
Well, here's the thing. Somebody made the comment on there, which is, I've never heard a truer statement. Somebody said, if you don't want someone to read something, put it in a YouTube comment. So, first of all, 95% of the people don't even look at the comment. That's why I started putting it as the description. I put it in a YouTube description, I'm sorry. And that's true, because people, I mean, I'm not trying to trick anybody. I'm not trying to like, oh, I cleaned it up, and this is how, I was able to clean it up this good. No, I explain it very clearly, because I'm not trying to trick anybody. And I say this is not for the purists. I understand you got people that they don't want anything touched. I mean, they're true hardcore bootleg guys. They want to hear warts and all. And here's the thing, I grew up a huge Star Wars fan. And when Lucas started doing the changing the stuff with the CGI and making, Greedo shoot first and all that, the thing that was annoying was you couldn't get the old version anymore. He sort of rewrote his history. And as a perfectionist myself, somebody that's, had a recording career and all that, I understand completely that you want to always go back and fix and make things better. The thing about Lucas is he didn't give you the old version. That's what pissed people off.
Right.
Well, here's the deal. You can go click on 20 other channels and watch Largo 79, watch all of those shows I put up, warts and all, exactly the way they were. I'm not erasing any kind of history. I'm not trying to, and I would make a very strong argument that what you hear when you watch the videos I've done is far more of an accurate depiction of that concert than what you heard on those original awful sounding board recordings.
Right.
I could make the argument that what I'm doing is probably more true to the show than what you would hear on the original recordings. And the way I look at it is like we know most of Kiss Alive 2 is a creation, right? But I'm fascinated by that. I think it's awesome that the older I got and the more you start learning about the Lost Alive 2, and you start understanding, they never even played Tomorrow and Tonight. But most people get mad, like, oh, this was all fake. I'm like, well, this is like a movie. This is cool how they were able to patch this together and create a concert. And for 20 years or something, most bands, we thought we were listening to a Kiss concert from 1977. And the thing is, some of those songs are from LA Forum. A few of those Love Gun songs are, probably cleaned up. But if they weren't recorded, the exact recordings, they definitely are recorded. They sound just like, there are some bootleg audience recordings from the LA Forum shows, like Calling Back Your Love, parts of Ace's solo. I mean, it's right from that. So, but the idea that they created that, I'm fascinated by it. And to me, you can look at live music in two different, it's like theater, it's like going to a Broadway musical or a Broadway play versus a movie. And if you want raw, 100%, no fixes, no changes, go see a theatrical play. Or if you want to see something that's a little bit more fantasy, smoothed over, you can do anything with a film, and that's a movie, And I think that's what Kiss were doing with those live albums. They weren't trying to really trick anybody. If you listen to the live recordings around 1975, even if they recorded every note of Kiss Alive in a studio, it still sounds 99% what they sounded like and what they sounded like.
Yeah.
So back to your question, people that get mad. Well, here's the thing. Most people don't read the description or understand what I'm doing.
True.
That's why I put it in the comment now. I figured maybe a few more people will see that. I make no, bones about what I'm doing with this stuff. And so, most people understand it. If Kiss does it, it's fine. If I do it, it's not fine. I've heard all kind of comments from, who the hell are you? You're not Eddie Kramer. How dare you? All that kind of stuff. And I'm like, hey, I'm a Kiss fan. Obviously, I know music. I know Kiss music. I know instruments. I know mixes. And I'm just trying to create something that I would have liked to have seen. What did Kiss say? They were making a band that they always wanted to see, right? When they formed Kiss. Well, I'm just doing videos that I always wished I could have seen. I would love to have watched Largo and heard it sounding good and heard what Kiss really sounded like on that tour. Alive 2, Alive, all that stuff. I mean, obviously, the Kobo shows, 76 shows would be the perfect Alive franKENstein thing, but those are off limits, privately owned, and I'm not going to bother wasting time because I'll get struck and taken down. So I don't know how anybody could watch what I'm doing and think I'm anything other than a really diehard Kiss fan. I mean, I spent months, literally months, on the Dynasty show. And part of that is because I'm still sort of, refining how I'm going about it, the approach. That show in particular didn't have a lot of sources. I'm retired as of last year. I retired early, so I literally was on the computer every day for hours and hours for months, working on that show and some of the other stuff, like the Paul Lynde thing and the Elder appearance on Fridays, all that kind of stuff. So, so that's kind of. But yeah, as far as what people think, like I say, if you're a purist, don't even watch it. Go watch another version of it. You've got someone like Necromonium, and he does very, very good cleanup jobs on these shows. He doesn't really do much with the audio, kind of just cleans it up a little bit. But That's why I decided I'm going to do something different than I don't know that anybody else has really done this or is doing this with the Kiss stuff. As far as trying to recreate that soundtrack, and then a few little, video tweaks and whatnot too. But that's why I'm doing my own thing. Does it bug me? Yeah, of course. Nobody wants to have somebody call your work crap or shitty or whatever when all you're trying to do is make something nicer for other fans to enjoy. And 99% of the people understand that. They're totally into it. And they're like, yeah, this is awesome. The people go and read the comment or the description. I don't know how anybody could complain. It's like I clearly say, this is what I'm doing. This is what I've used. This is what I've sourced. This is what you're hearing here and there. I mean, I'm not going to get into every detail because it would take. You only get 500 words or 500 letters or characters, whatever it is. And believe me, the description I had was 3 times that long until I trimmed it down to fit. Right. So there's bits and pieces. The beginning. Here's an example. The very beginning of Radioactive. You hear Gene 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all the way from Hotter Than Hell. Where you hear Gene do the 1, 2, 3, 4, bump, bump. Well, I pulled it off because live Gene does. If you hear the rehearsal tape, he yells off 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he started with the kick. So I pulled it off of Hotter Than Hell, synced it up. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of little like Easter eggs and things like that used throughout. But I'm not I can't get into all the details in that description because you're limited on how much you could say. And of course, people don't read it anyway. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing with this kind of stuff. I'm trying to, and then of course audio. I'm getting ready to get probably pure hate from tons of people because I'm right in the middle of, for the 50th anniversary. I am actually remixing Hotter Than Hell, which many people remastered, and we feel what I'm doing, and I'll tell you now, I'm like 2/3 of the way through. I'm hoping to have this done by October. So for the 50th anniversary. I absolutely love Hotter Than Hell. It's always been one of my very favorite Kiss albums, and it sounds like crap. We all know it sounds like crap. Yep. Yes, it has an ambiance. Yes, it has a darkness to it that that makes it a little bit more forgivable. But we all wish it sounded better, right? I mean, most things about it. But when you break it down, it's not as bad as we think it is. The snare sounds like crap. The cymbals are a little harsh, but bass sounds great, kick drum sounds great, vocals are clear, solos are awesome, guitar tones with a little EQ. So what I've done is basically what I'm using is I'm using the basis of Peter's drums, which is from the album, and then I've got custom samples I've created, not 2024 samples, not a Superior Drummer or Drum Kit from Hell. These are samples I've created myself using recordings of Peter Criss, using his drums. I've taken samples from Larger Than Life. I've taken from Dressed to Kill. I've taken from other sources to create a good, fairly natural 1974-75 Peter Criss snare sound. And I'm replacing all the snare. I've tweaked the toms. I'm replacing cymbals with Peter Criss's ride and crash cymbals that I've sampled from other sources. And I'm recreating, over the top of his drums, what I think is a good 1970s drum mix. And then I'm tweaking the guitar EQ tones. And I'm remixing it. 90% of what you're going to hear is going to be the exact same Hotter Than Hell album we've always had. I'm not messing with things, with a couple of exceptions, I'll tell you. But what I'm also doing is I'm calling it Hotter Than Hell Reimagined.
Nuts.
Hotter Than Hell is a weird album because we think it's a very dark, doomy album. But I would make the argument that, along with Destroyer and The Elder, I think Hotter Than Hell is the most diverse album Kiss ever had. And the reason I say it is because you've got a ballad in Going Blind, you've got just rock and roll jam with Let Me Go Rock and Roll, we've got mid-tempo rockers, we've got pre-doom metal with Strange Ways, We've got Parasite, which is sort of a pseudo-punk metal riff. There's so much variety in that album. And then you've got straight-ahead pop songs, you've got Coming Home, you've got Mainline, so what I'm doing is I'm calling it Reimagined. Now, I'm going to post it separately. If you want to put it in the original order, you can. But I'm doing mine's kicking off with Coming Home.
It's been a month or two since I was sleeping with you. I'm coming home again.
And it's going to rearrange the song order because I think this is a very different album than what we think it is sometimes. There's a lot of up-tempo, pop, good. I mean, I love Got to Choose, but it's got to be the worst opening song on any Kiss album, I think. It's just a very odd opener, right? It's very, plus it's like extra slow on the album. So I think that when you hear what I'm doing with it, you're going to hear mostly Hotter Than Hell with a hopefully not in a bad way, noticeable different drum sound, because all the toms are from the real album. All what he's playing is from the real album. It's just not going to sound like a brittle, a can or whatever. It's not saying anger, but we know what it's. It's just very brittle, upper mid range. But the kick drum sounds good. Toms sound really good most of the time. Cymbals are a little harsh, but all that stuff will be smoothed over. But what I'm doing, for example, the biggest changes, there's only like 3 songs I think I'm really making any changes to. Coming Home, I've already got a remix up on YouTube, which this is going to be different. But it's got the acoustic guitars in there from Unplugged, which I think really add. I mean, I think Coming Home was probably one of the most overlooked Kiss songs until Unplugged happened. And I did see I'm from St. Louis, and I saw the convention tour here in 95. And like everybody else, I was like, wow, Coming Home, what a cool song. And you can hear it, right?
Yeah.
If you listen to Higher Than Hell, there's literally a kick and a snare. There's just like no drums. It's just the weirdest mix I've ever heard. And that song, like most people, I kind of half ignored it for 35 or whatever years. And then Unplugged, it's like, wow, what a great song. In fact, it's such a great song. I think it's going to be a killer opener. I think it's going to be more in line with something like Room Service or one of the more up-tempo. Let's kick off a Kiss album up-tempo with a great, short, little hooky song. Then we'll get into the darker stuff. Then we'll get into the heavier stuff. So the other change I'm making is I also have a version of Going Blind. This is going to be a different mix, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say, let's pretend Kiss had a few bucks, and they put a little bit more time into it, and really made Going Blind sound like what it should sound like. And I'm taking a little of the orchestral stuff that they did on the symphonic concert, blend a little of that in, and let's make it sound like a nice, cool, dark ballad, which it's supposed to sound like. And then the other major change I'm making is Let Me Go Rock and Roll is an extremely edited, shortened, trimmed down version. What I've done is I've taken the original version, which is all intact, and then right where it would end, I've extended about 2 or 3 minutes using the Bell Studio demo version, which I don't know if you're familiar with that one or not. It's got a lot of those live jam pieces in it, some extra solos, some extra riffs, and I'm also taking parts from Alive, a little bit of the bass breakdown, a little bit of the cool Ace solo that comes later on Alive, because this is stuff they were doing at that time. I'm not taking a solo, I'm not taking stuff from 1985 and dropping it into 1974, right? This is stuff they were doing, and they may have even recorded and just edited it down in the studio. But to me, so the album's actually going to end, not with Strange Ways, it's going to end with Let Me Go Rock and Roll. The way the Kiss shows often did, it's their jam, it's going to be an extended version, it's going to sound just like it's from the album, but it's going to add in, like I've recreated all those other drum parts using the same drum sounds and samples that are in the rest of the album, so you won't notice. It's like not just tagged on, but it's going to be a slightly extended, cooler jam version that's going to end this version of the album that I'm doing. And pretty much everything else is just a cleaned up, remixed, levels a little bit evened out, guitars EQ'd to sound a little bit less harsh, drums cleaned up. But to me, it will be the Hotter Than Hell I wish I had to listen to, because it's a hard listen. It just is. No matter how many times you run it through an EQ, you do this and that, you're never going to get the phrase polishing a turd. You really kind of can't, but you can kind of clean it up a little bit. Maybe not smell as bad or something, but basically, yeah, I think Hotter Than Hell is a fantastic album. I think it's maybe my favorite of the 70s albums, honestly. So many cool songs on it. Unlike, I'm not a huge fan of Dress to Kill overall. It's my least favorite of the original 6, just because I think it's a lot more one-dimensional than some of the stuff. It does sound clean, it does sound crisp, but I think, man, when you compare the material with like Dress to Kill with Hotter Than Hell, I think Hotter Than Hell just crushes. I mean, it's just so many cool. Oh, the other change I wanted to mention, and I do have sort of a live version of this, but this will be a little less noticeable, is my other what if for my Hotter Than Hell reimagined is, what if Ace would have sung Parasite with Gene? Maybe he wasn't quite confident enough to do the lead vocal himself. So this mix has the Ace vocal that he did, in more recent years when he did a version of Parasite. I'm taking that Ace vocal, I'm blending it with Gene on the album, and we're going to have the gang vocal like that Gene and Paul would do, but it's going to be Ace and Gene. And what would this have sounded like if Ace had went ahead and just done this and said, but Gene, sing it with me, I don't want to do a lead vocal, but sing it with me. And I think Ace's voice gives a little bit more of a punk feel a little bit more of a loose, just kind of quirkiness to it. And so those are the major changes. But that's the thing I'm working on right now. And I'm sure I'm going to get lots of hate for it. Most people think it's awesome. Anybody else is going to be like, how dare you touch Hotter Than Hell? You know what I mean? I've heard it a million times. And yeah, you can crap it up using modern samples. I've tried to do some things, but I'm still messing with things. I'm still coming up with new ideas of how to approach this stuff. So what I do want to do is not just drop in sample drums. You know what I mean? I want to try to recreate a well-recorded Peter Criss playing what he plays, which is cool stuff. A lot of it you can't hear, or it's just very brittle and kind of crappy sounding. So anyway, that's the other big thing I'm working on. And then the Houston show I'll eventually post. Cool. And then the one other thing I want to mention that I'm going to be working on in the coming months is I'm doing I'm not sure Sydney's going to be off limits. I was going to redo the Sydney show, which of course sounds pretty good, but I was going to try to clean it up even more. But what I decided to do instead is I've already redone a ton of that audio, and I did the Fridays appearance where I redid the audio basically for the Elder material, which I'm a huge Elder fan. So what I'm working on is I've created a completely fan fiction, fantasy 1981, Kiss does a tour for the Elder. And what it's going to be composed, it's going to be called The Lost Alive 3. I'm using the 3 songs from Fridays. I'm using all the post-Alive 2 material from Sydney, like New York Groove and 2000 Man and I Was Made for Loving You, all those songs that would have been played around if they had done a tour in 81. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also recreating, and this is pure fan fiction, I've got Escape from the Island, live version, where I've re-edited guitars. I've got Eric Stroh's resampled. I've got Paul doing the Everybody Say Rock and Roll live thing over the drum breakdown in the middle. I've got a live version of Mr. Blackwell that I'm creating, which replaces God of Thunder and goes seamlessly into Eric's 1980 Sydney drum solo, and then back into Mr. Blackwell. This would be in Gene's vehicle for the blood spitting, for the and I've redone it all. It's not just album with fake audience behind it. I mean, I've kind of remixed it all. I've changed guitar parts. I've added drum fills in that I think Eric could have played that tie into his drum solo. So you've got like about 5-6 songs. The concert starts with the Oath, ends with I, which has the sing-along crowd chanting that I believe in me, And then in between will be sandwiched all of the other tunes that would have possibly been played in 81 to create just like Alive 2. We know Alive 2 is part Tokyo, it's part LA, it's part soundcheck, it's part studio, And the only songs that will be repeated from the official live albums on this fake Elder live tour are going to be the encores, which will be Detroit Rock City, because Paul's vocals are awesome in 1980 on Detroit Rock City. Oh, yeah. Strutter, because Eric really kind of makes it his own. Cold Gin, because we get Ace singing. And then, of course, Black Diamond, because we get Eric singing. So all of those repeats will all be significantly different than the Alive or Live 2 versions, So anyway, that's the other thing I'm working on. And that'll just be something. It sounds really cool what I've got so far. And pure fantasy, pure fiction, part real, part imaginary. So we'll see. But that's the kind of stuff I like to do. Try to recreate or create something different, something unique.
Well, man, what if we jump into a wish list? We'll do a couple items that you wish Kiss would do, because I think there's some things now that they're retired and the touring is over, I think that's kind of one of the main plays they've got is to kind of reissue old things and revamp old things. So yeah. So I got about 5 different ones, man. But what do you got? Give me your number 5. You have one that you'd like to see?
Well, these would be pretty fantasy, because we know that unfortunately Gene and Paul don't really care that much. I don't think. But the things that I guess one of the biggest things would be we know through some of the leaked stuff and whatnot. There's a lot of stuff around Kiss Alive that was captured, including where are all the masters of all the other shows they recorded? Where is all that stuff? I would love to just have a giant chunk of Kiss Alive video, audio, alternate live versions. I mean, there's so much stuff there. I don't know how they never saw and I don't know whether that full Kobo 75 video exists. We've got like about 7-8 songs. Not sure whether, but they've got the Super 8 stuff. They've got all that stuff, even Cadillac. There's so much great stuff around Kiss Alive, and that was so pivotal. I'm surprised they never put a lot more of that out. So that would be one dream, I guess, a ton of that stuff. Another one would be, I would love to hear any and all Elder material.
Yeah, I got that on mine too.
I'm just fascinated by that album. It's weird as the album is decisive or divisive as it is. I am so glad they did that album. I just am. As a fan, it's a whole world of Kiss that's just, how boring would their career have been without something like that, right? In the movie. By the way, we didn't talk about it. Of course, we did the whole Kiss Meets the Phantom thing too. But
Sight of riot destroyed the park.
Blame it on us.
Right. We've got to get out of here.
Leave it to me, Star Child. I'll bend these beams with my mind.
Which is another thing which I think God just made that movie. As corny as it was, I saw it when it aired. Everybody made fun of me the next school. All I do was pretty corny, but seeing Kiss on TV was just gold. I mean, how glad am I that they made Kiss Meets the Phantom? So, okay, so that would be my other. So, The Elder. I'd like to hear all the Aces stuff, any solos they cut out. I'd love to just hear all that stuff. I'm like one of those guys that when the Beatles released Anthology, I love demos, I love alternate versions, I love to hear how songs are made. The average person maybe doesn't care about that stuff, but I love all that stuff. I like to see the origin, the evolution of this music. And so I guess another one would be, what were we just talking about? Oh, I'd love to see, from what I understand, a 35 millimeter print of the TV version does exist. No one has it, except for Warner Brothers, apparently. But there is a high-quality version that I'd love to get on that or have release a really, really good, clean TV version, because I really can't stand the Attack of the Phantoms version. Right. Solo songs, shoehorned in and all that crap. I like the porno music that was originally in it. I think it's way better. So anything to do with Kiss Meets the Phantom, that's another. That and The Elder are my two, thank God they did that, because it makes the band so much more interesting to me anyway. The other thing would be, and this is something we discussed on the FAQ boards before, there was a thing where there was some sort of documentary where they're going through the archives of the Universal Music, whatever archives, and the guys show a shelf, and there's some 2-inch multi-track reels of Dress to Kill, and right next to it is what looks like a 2-inch 24-track. It says Kiss Anaheim, 1976, Anaheim Stadium. It's just shown for a couple seconds. We've all been like, whoa, what is that? Which leads me to think, did they bring Eddie Kramer? I mean, we know they multi-camera videotaped the Anaheim Stadium show. I'm convinced that, whether it was Eddie or somebody else, I think they brought a remote truck out, recorded the audio, maybe with the plans to do something with it. Either maybe they never took it in the studio and mixed it, maybe they didn't do anything with it, they didn't like it, maybe there's just no place to use it. But I'm pretty sure there might be multi-tracks, and that would be a pretty cool thing to mix out and put together with that footage. That would be a fantastic Spirit of 76. We're coming up, right? A couple of years from now, we're going to have the, whatever we call it, bicentennial and a half, or whatever, 50 years from bicentennial, it'll be our 250th birthday, right? How cool would a Spirit of 76 in 2026 Anaheim Stadium with professional sound be? That would be pretty cool.
That'd be killer.
And again, I'm speculating. It sure looks like 2-inch master tapes in there. I'm not sure. It says Reel 1. If it's videotape, it's not going to say Reel 1. Having been in studios back in the 80s and 90s, it's a reel of tape. And it sure looks like a 24-track 2-inch master tape. And if there's one reel, there'll be more than one reel. And so I'm guessing, this was only, a couple months after they did the Tokyo, which they recorded to a Japan only second live album, which was scrapped and then of course recycled for Kids Alive 2. So it's very possible. So I don't know if that's 4 or whatever. That's probably my big ones. Having seen a ton of the leaked stuff and talked to people, I don't think there's very many, if any at all, more pro shot shows. I don't think, somebody's giggling and laughing right now listening to this because they've got something that no one has ever seen. But,
right.
but honestly, other than the Kobo 76, 75 stuff, which was really cool to see, and there's the silent stuff in the Dynasty tour. But other than that, I don't know. I don't think there's any 74 Winterland. These would be fantastic, obviously, to see, but I don't know if there's anything all that great still left in the vaults. But with Kiss having sold or apparently sold off the brand,
right.
I don't know if they're looking at the future, the whole Avatar thing. I don't know what all that's even about, honestly. But I don't know if we're going to get a lot more really cool stuff. It's a real shame that oftentimes the artist just doesn't understand the love that the fans have, because obviously they don't feel what the fans feel, and I don't think they understand how gold that stuff is.
Let me tell you some of my picks here, what I'm looking for.
Sure.
This one just came to me today because I saw a version of I Confess. It was like a demo from Carnival of Souls, and I think Carnival of Souls has to be cleaned up, because when that pops into my playlist, I've got a 90s playlist of all like Revenge and like Dio stuff from the 90s, and a lot of that stuff production was like peaking, but man, Carnival of Souls just sounds like shit. It really needs to be.
Well, they just kind of sort of half-assed it from the beginning. They sort of abandoned it partway through, probably. So that's probably why.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on the Phantom of the Park. I mean, like you said, everybody needs to check it out. I'll put a link in the video, but you did a lot of cool things. You kind of changed the pacing of the movie in spots, and you enhanced the special effects and did a lot of cool things. I'd like to see it go to the next level where somebody even would do like a deep fake and get rid of like the stuntmen faces and stuff, because it's
there's a guy that's to me things like that, but think about it. How confusing would it be if it really was Ace and Ace? To me,
yeah, it's true.
Aren't the bad doubles sort of part of the charm?
Yeah, it is part of the charm.
Actually, use real members to play the stunt guy,
Yeah,
and I find it confusing.
No, I'm with you.
Throws, Ace against the wall, and it's the fake Ace. It's the bad guy. There's a couple scenes where like Peter will hit Peter, and it'll really be Peter, and it's confusing. Which one's really him? In fact, the last little bit on stage when they blow them up, when they're kind of standing there and the fake, I didn't even get at first that was the fake guys and the real guys, because it's the real Kiss.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying, but at the same time, it might just be too confusing. I need to see the bad double to know it's the bad guy. And also, when I kind of upgraded some of the special effects, I wasn't trying to make it like, super like high def, whatever. This one guy's done a great job. We replaced some of the stuff and creates these. I was trying to do more of like, if this was 1978, 79, how might they have hit the strings a little bit better? Maybe they could have done a little bit of this or a little bit of that. So I was trying to kind of keep it a little bit kind of cheeky, 70s-ish thing. I wasn't trying to go full on, like replace the people's faces and stuff. So that's kind of what I was doing with that. But there's obviously, but again, I would almost argue that I like the bad doubles.
Yeah, it's part of the charm. I'm with you with the Elder. I went back and I reread Kiss and Sell the other day, and CK there talks about when they did a listening party for the Elder, and there was all this narration.
Matter of fact, I think you're going to like this one. He's got the light in his eyes and the look of a champion, a real champion.
I've heard this in different sources where there's narration between every song, but we only got that little bit at the end of the Elder. So I think that stuff's got to be around somewhere, and I think Elder needs to be, remastered, remixed, put in that extra stuff, put in all that narration. Probably would make a lot more sense, if you did. Yeah,
that. I do want to add, absolutely, the U.S. track running order with the Oath has to be the running order. I don't care what anybody says about the original is awful. Can you even imagine? I mean, I heard, obviously, I picked it up here. It was the Oath. It kicked my ass. I can't even imagine if it was like three of the lamest, most boring pieces of music starting the whole first side. I can't imagine. They both buried. Here's the thing I think people don't understand about the narrative. Basically it's Star Wars. It's King Arthur. It's the hero's journey, right? We all know that. Yep. It's the most cliche sort of comic booky kind of good versus evil. So that's not a big deal. But here's the way I see it. To me, there are many films like this. The Oath is like the statement. This is the kid taking the oath. This is what we're here to tell you the story, right? That's how I view it. The Oath is setting the stage, and then they go back and tell the story. Very, very common. A lot of films use this method where they drop you in the middle of the story or at the end of the story even, and this is where we are, and now we're going to go back and tell you how it got here. That's the way I see it, and I think the music is perfectly balanced on the U.S. running order. I mean, The Oath kicking it off, you take it down a little bit, you get the two great songs at the end of side one, and then World Without Hero, and it just builds, and I is the big rock and roll all night for the 80s, right? To me, it's the perfect roller coaster ride. I think the sequencing is perfect on the U.S. version. When they remastered it, I don't know, man. I can understand why somebody would throw the tape against the wall or whatever it was that Ace Claims did. I get it, man, because I would have been like, what the hell is this? You know, so and I'm not a big fan of record labels, having been in the business for a long time, but they did the right thing. They made the right call. It didn't matter. And I've always said, Kiss could have released Sgt. Pepper in 1981 and nobody would have cared. Really. No way. So it's nothing wrong. And I'm not just one of these contrarians. I get it. I like the rock 70s Kiss too. But, man, The Elder is some of the greatest music they ever wrote and recorded. I think it's fantastic. I think Paul got a little short-changed on it because other than The Oath, he's actually pretty weak on the album. I think Ezrin put him in that role. I mean, The Wall was my all-time favorite album. Since I was 12 and it came out, The Wall, nothing had passed it. And Ezrin clearly making characters, right? Paul was the little falsetto, just the boy, right? I think that didn't get really shine much on that album. I think Gene absolutely shines on The Elder. Yeah. I think Gene is, not the greatest, strongest song, but I get it. It fits, right? It's part of it. But man, Gene is just, his voice is so great on that album. Some of his songs are so great. I think it's one of Gene's finest, shining hours, honestly. It's great for him. Eric absolutely kills it. I know he didn't play on a couple of songs. Why? I don't know. Again, Ezrin. I think Ezrin, I call him the home wrecker. You read about that very much. Every band he ever worked with pretty much broke up, or somebody ended up kicking. I mean, even Rick Wright was fired from Pink Floyd. It's like, that guy's not happy unless he's breaking up the home, for whatever. And I love, it's The Wall, The Elder. I love his work, but man, oh man, he gets in people's heads. But, Eric, come on, he's on Fridays playing He sounds perfectly fine. Why would you need someone else to play it, right?
Yeah, he sounds killer. One thing I want is, and I commented this on your channel, was a beefed up Unmasked, because I love Unmasked, but it's so thin. And I would just this is something maybe down the road that you could try. But
I've already played around with it.
So the guitar's got to be heavier than the drums.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's a really, really well recorded album. I think it's great. And they even record every single studio album like they recorded it live. I don't care how fake a live is. That's what every Kiss album sounds like. I don't know what other band is a better example of not capturing their live greatness than Kiss. I mean, their albums were so sterile compared to what they were doing at the time.
100%. And then my last one is this kind of the vibe of Phantom of the Park, but I'd like to have a big budget Kiss Marvel type movie. I think the story of Kiss with the Talisman is great. You could almost play it almost the way Shazam is, where you could have these teens that become behemoths when they transform into rockers. I don't know. I think there's a lot that you could do with a Kiss big budget Marvel type movie.
Yeah, for sure, and I'm sure somebody's already got that on paper somewhere, right?
Probably. I would assume so. But those are that's my wish list.
Somebody once said, what was it? I forget what someone quoted about Kiss, they never failed to disappoint, basically. Right. I don't know if it's because Kiss fans, we have such high expectations for everything Kiss, or because we have a lifetime of, it's weird for people that aren't of the age where they were actually Kiss fans back in the 70s when they were really at their peak, and people say, they inflated the numbers, it's all fake, rewritten history. No, I can tell you, as a kid that was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, during those late 70s, dude, Kiss was the shit. They were everywhere. And yeah, they had haters. And yeah, I got into them even at the time, 77. They were already fans of my older brother that were giving me their albums for $2 because they thought Destroyer was sold out.
Right.
Right. They thought they sold out with Destroyer. But yeah, you've always had, and unfortunately Kiss, I think Kiss's biggest problem is they've never been able to make a change that would bring in more fans without isolating the existing fans.
True.
And no matter what it is, whether it was going into the disco-y stuff where they, I Was Made for Love You, huge hit, but oh my God, did everybody walk away. I saw it with my own eyes. Everybody that I knew as a Kiss fan the year before that were like, they suck. They're disco, they're this, they're that, they're for kids, AC/DC's the thing, and then they tried to do something more deep with the Elder. Everybody laughed at them. They got metal on with Vinny, and everybody was like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's so fun. I have a very simple explanation, I think, for the demographic shift that we saw between 77, 78, and then Dynasty, and then what happened with Creatures of the Night. My theory is, if you look at the people that were at the Dynasty tour, a lot of them were little kids, and their parents took them. By the time Creatures of the Night came around, those kids were teenagers driving themselves, and their parents weren't there anymore.
Right.
It's the same people, probably. Just mom and dad were at home. That's why the halls were half empty, right?
Yep, exactly.
Took all the parents and the older siblings that didn't like Kiss out of the Dynasty shows, and what would those audiences look like, right? So who knows? But yeah, unfortunately, I think. But back to your idea is it's a great one, and there's so much cool stuff. It's just amazing how Kiss seems so great at missing what their fans really want, and fans are vocal as hell. I mean, they couldn't not know what the fans want. I just think they have a very weird, and when I say Kiss, I mean Gene and Paul. Of course, Ace, Ace is sitting on all those tapes from the Elder, right? He's probably got all that stuff.
Yep.
He recorded it all in his own studio. He's got tapes of all his solos and all that stuff. Does he put any of it out? Does he do anything? Nah. I don't think he cares as much as any more than any other guys do.
Yeah. Because
they don't understand the gold that stuff is to their fans, but unfortunately. So, I don't know, maybe, God forbid, when those guys pass on, maybe we'll go, hey, man, if I don't know if they sold everything off outright by then, or maybe somebody, my band was around in the late 80s, early 90s, we broke up in 93, but what we had is, in the 2000s, we had these, overseas, we had these big fans, like magazines, festivals. We had people that were fans of ours back when we were, in the 90s. Now they're all grown up, they're working at these magazines, they're working for these festivals, and they're bringing us to play these festivals because they were fans. And it's kind of like the annual movie thing, right? Maybe somebody at Universal, somebody with money will say, hey, man, I love Kiss. And yeah, I'll give you $1 million for those shows, and I'll have somebody do it, and I'll release it. All the fans will be thrilled. Pocket change, right? Maybe that'll happen. Will Paul ever do it? I kind of don't. I kind of doubt it at this point, unfortunately. I kind of stopped, expecting them to do anything really, really cool. And I'm not, talk down on them. I'm saying I don't think they care that much, nearly as much as we do about these things.
No. Well, brother, it's been great chatting with you. I'm going to put a link to your channel. I love the stuff that you're doing, and
awesome.
Just keep it up, man. It's great stuff. I'm looking forward to the Hotter Than Hell release. And
I think I'll probably do a couple more things, and we're kind of tapping out because some of the stuff is just not able. It's just going to get struck and taken down. So I'm going to be moving more into doing some more audio stuff, just some unique stuff, what if stuff, fantasy type Kiss mix stuff, and Hotter Than Hell will be coming fully remixed and. Absolutely unmasked is something I'll definitely look at and playing around with as well.
Cool. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate the time, Ken.
Thanks for having me, man. Take care.
Have a good one now. Yep, bye.